All right, we're going to get started since it is 12 o'clock Central Time. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Sam Glazer-Hewson with the University of Minnesota Alumni Association, and I'm so excited to welcome you today to our webinar for Future in Focus. It's called Research on a Stick, How the State Fair Research Building Accelerates Discovery. We want to thank our Alumni Association members for powering everything that we do, including making the Future in Focus series possible and free and accessible to everyone in our community. In today's session, we'll hear from a group of folks who both support and conduct research right down the road, starting in a few weeks here during the Minnesota State Fair. I'm personally so excited to learn more, and this is great timing with the fair just a few weeks away from kicking off. Before we jump in, just a few housekeeping items to note. The session is being recorded today, and it will be shared with everyone who registered, also uploaded to our UMAA video archives for future viewing. You will also receive a follow-up email that includes our program evaluation and ways to keep being involved, so be sure to stay tuned. And as you think of your questions during today's talk, please submit them via the Zoom Q&A feature. We will be moderating them as they come in, and we'll ask as many as we can during the Q&A portion of the session. Speaking of today's session, we'll be featuring several key individuals who are directly involved with making it possible to conduct research at the State Fair, as well as some researchers who have done exactly that. Each of their bios is available on the full event page that I'll link in the chat for you all. But to kick us off, I'm excited to introduce Dr. Ellen Demerath. Ellen Demerath serves as professor in the School of Public Health within the Division of Epidemiology and Community Health, and also serves as the co-director of the University of Minnesota's State Fair Research Building, which she's here to tell us much more about. Welcome, Ellen, and thank you so much for being here in partnership with the Future in Focus series, and over to you.
Well, thanks for that introduction, and thanks everybody for joining today. I'm really excited to share a high-level look at the history of this idea and its impact. So we're going to start off with that, and then we'll head into individual researchers who have done their work there. Next slide. So it could be said that this so far is a marriage made in heaven. What we're doing is pairing up our beloved Big Ten Research University with the equally, if not more beloved, Great Minnesota Get Together, the Minnesota State Fair. So the university has a rather large footprint on the State Fair campus already. You might have seen the university at at the horticulture building. You'll see the marching band. You'll see coaches and athletes at the Crossroads building. But what this was a new idea where we are pairing up with the fair to bring university researchers to do research at the fair on the spot. Next slide. So I'm not from Minnesota myself. I'm from Wisconsin. And I was really surprised to learn that the Minnesota State Fair and the University of Minnesota actually have very similar missions. So the fair began in 1865 as a territorial fair to highlight agriculture and encourage farming in the area. And then it became the Minnesota State Fair in 1859, just a year after Minnesota was granted statehood. Its mission is to educate and engage fairgoers by highlighting Minnesota's agriculture, art, and industry. And the fair aims not just to give us 12 days of fun, but actually to provide a forum for knowledge and ideas. It's also very large. It's been voted one of the top 10 summer festivals in the world, and it is the largest fair in the United States per capita. So we have about 2 million people who come to the State Fair every year. Next slide. The University of Minnesota, which is just 1 year older than the State Fair, has followed a fairly similar mission, actually. Our mission since our founding is to advance learning, the search for truth, and to share this knowledge through education and to apply the knowledge to benefit people of the state, the nation, and the world. Next slide. So partly also why this marriage works is because we have similar goals. So the University of Minnesota is a top 10 public research university, as you probably know. We currently have about $1.4 billion per year in research expenditures. So that makes us a very large research institution. And our innovation, you've heard of, I'm sure, and you've even been a part of this. You may have been leading these innovations yourselves, from agricultural innovation, medical devices and cures, sustainable technology, and many other things. And we do that work right in partnership with industry, with government, state and local government, community organizations, et cetera. And we do this to serve all Minnesotans. Next slide. I want to just spend 1 minute on our origin story. So, what was our meet cute in this relationship between the state fair and the university? Well, in 2012, Dr. Logan Spector in pediatrics and I piloted a study called the Go for Kids study. That study was meant to uncover genetic factors that regulate growth and development in children, and it would involve taking saliva from people and even some blood samples for DNA extraction, right, to get the genetic information. Well, Logan had the brilliant but somewhat unusual idea of recruiting families for this study of genetics at the state fair. And so we were able to get a spot at the Crossroads building. That's where the athletic teams are presented, and you can get tickets there and athletic gear, etc. But we were astounded. The day we opened, there were hordes of people who were lined up wanting to be involved in the study. We were given about 36 hours total to do the work, and we had about 600 families participate. We were astounded and excited. And that pilot study led us to apply for a grant from the University of Minnesota internally to build this up, scale it up, and maybe create a building and a place where this could be done full time. Now, where would that be? Well, if you don't know, the State Fair is highly controlling of its properties, right? They know what works and what attracts people. Not just anybody can get there. So we were thrilled in that year of two of planning to have the State Fair say, yes, that sounds good. And where did they put us? Well, the only place they could put us was on Cosgrove Street in Spamville. So on the left, you see that building. Many of you may have been there, much beloved. We do love our spam, but the Spam Corporation decided they would, Hormel would leave. They weren't going to be using that building anymore. So we were put there. It's right across from Creative Arts and Educational Building, 4-H. So it's sort of a good family-friendly area. But, it needed a little zhuzh, so we painted it in the good old maroon and gold. It was a little small, so we had to put some tents out there so that more researchers could fit there. And to be honest, it was a 1950s, little bit leaky building without good accessibility. So the next step then was to garner support from the university to make a capital investment. And that's what happened with this new building in 2017. We were garnered about $500,000 to do the complete demo and build up a brand new building that, in fact, was designed by students in our School of Design. Next slide. Okay, so we have this great building, but what exactly goes on at the fair? So in the next few slides, I'm going to just talk about what the researchers from the university get when they come. And they do have to pay. Okay, so that's often a surprise to people because it's very much a university facing kind of public facing entity. But actually, this entity is not owned or run by any particular department or office. It's its own little business. And so we run it where the researchers who want to be there pay a certain amount of money for the hours that they're there, and we just only charge them for the cost it takes for us to put on the show. Next slide. All right, well, so the most important thing we provide researchers is dedicated research space on the busiest street in the United States, right, for those 12 days. Other things we provide is secure Wi-Fi in the building. We had to run fiber optic cable in there for iPads so people can do consenting and data collection very smoothly and securely. We provide admission tickets for study staff, tables, chairs. We help researchers get big equipment there if they need to. We help with biospecimen support. Yep, we learned you can get blood, saliva, other hair samples at the fair, and we help researchers do that if they need to. A big thing we do is also source things like research participant gifts for participating in the research and other things. Next slide. One of the main reasons researchers come back year to year is because of that high flow of people, right? The fair is just so busy. So they're kind of flowing into the building and out of the building. And that flow of people really accelerates the pace of research subject recruitment. And so in that way, researchers see a high return on the investment they make by paying for time in the building. So depending on the type of study, maybe how complex the study is, teams can have up to 400 people enrolled in a single morning or afternoon if it's a very simple protocol. We've been told by our users that they can complete what would normally take them, a year to do, they can do in just a few days. Next slide. Well, when you're dealing with human subjects, you've got to make sure you've got proper consent and assent from the participants and inform them about what's going to be done with the data and what it's for. And that's not really very simple in such a very busy environment. So this is something unique that we do provide, which is to have a dedicated institutional review board, IRB representative that guides us and all of the study investigators every year. So we have a special committee from the IRB that reviews our applications for the building users. And they are all familiar with the context. We also do a best practices boot camp for investigators during the year before the fair starts. And that's just to help them get around the idea of, sure, you want to have fast enrollment, but you've got to take the time to do what's right, which is to explain what the study's about, what the risks and the benefits are, and to make sure that they do understand that before they consent. Next slide. We connect researchers with media. So there's lots of interest often in what's going on at the building, TV, radio. They want to find out what's going on. And so we're able to help researchers pair that up and manage that occasion. And that, it benefits the individual studies to get their message or their cool new ideas out there. And I think it also benefits the university because it really shows what we're doing in a very accessible way for the general public. We just had hosted, and I think he's coming back again, Annie, a documentarian who's doing a big documentary on the Minnesota State Fair. So that'll be fun. Next slide. I want to say that this facility services the entire university system. We have investigators from all 5 campuses, 41 schools and colleges. About 112 different departments and divisions are represented in terms of the researchers. We also have external collaborators. We're getting noticed, right? So we have collaborators between university investigators and those at Mayo Clinic, Boston Scientific, Minnesota Department of Health, and area universities, among others. Next slide. So let's talk just a little bit about the numbers. This graph here on the left shows you the number of fair-goers who enter the building each year. They're plotted in maroon. The number of fair-goers who consent to actually participate in research in yellow, and the number of individual research studies in gray. So what you can see is that the idea took off really well up until 2019. Then something happened, right? 2020 happened, and the entire fair was canceled for only the 6th time in history. And then in 2021, we decided to only open 50% capacity out of an abundance of caution. And so, but we bounced back, and at this point, we're back to where we were before COVID. And this year, we expect the numbers to be maybe even better. Annie tells me that we are booked completely, and every square inch is accounted for this coming fair. Next slide. So what does this mean? To date, over 500,000 people have come into the building. Yes, we have a people counter. We have over 200,000 participants that have signed consent and enrolled. We have 500 studies or more that have been supported, 65 of which are student-led, which is really important, right? Students need opportunities to quickly turn around research projects during their degrees. Over 200 publications and 22 million in grants funded that were based upon data collected at our facility. And our enrollment, those participants who come in, those 200,000, they reach broadly across the state. We have representation from all 87 counties, and 72% of Minnesota's zip codes are represented in the research done there. It also, our demographics match the state demographics, and we have a concentration of participants from the Twin Cities metro area. Next slide. So I believe that we at the State Fair Research Building are making important broader impacts, beyond that research metric specifically. What we have here is something that brings university research into dialogue with Minnesotans. It promotes greater citizen participation in university research. And more broadly than that, it can build a culture of research participation by and for Minnesotans. Next slide. The State Fair building runs beautifully, but we have dreams of moving beyond the State Fair grounds and scale it up statewide by going out on the road to county fairs and other large events. So we have successfully pilot tested this idea, and we're working to gain momentum around the university leadership to provide us important funding that would be needed to scale this up and to make that sort of vision come to fruition. We hope to activate a statewide research network, community-driven solutions, and inspire the next generation of students with hands-on experiences with researchers. Next slide. So in conclusion, whether it's breakthroughs in heart health, a new study about soil conservation, or what have you, the State Fair Research Building brings the University of Minnesota out into the public sphere. By connecting fairgoers with research from every campus, we are delivering on our land grant mission to serve the needs of all Minnesotans. Next slide. So thank you for that. And I think what I should do now is introduce our first research leader who's going to speak to you about what they've been working on. So Dr. Wendy Lumen is a professor at the University of Minnesota School of Nursing and a pediatric nurse practitioner. Her work centers on youth resilience and mental health, with an emphasis on how supportive relationships, coping mechanisms, and meaning-based contributions to adolescent well-being. Dr. Lumen has led a series of community-based mixed method studies through our research facility, engaging over 1,000 youth at the State Fair and 3 county fairs since 2019. These projects use participant-generated timelines and narrative sharing to identify protective factors in young people. Data and finding from these sequential studies were used to develop a parent-teen intervention called Family Connect, which is slated for testing in a future randomized control trial. All right, thank you, and welcome to Dr. Lumen.
Thank you, Ellen. I'm Wendy Lohman, and I am so excited to have an opportunity to talk about research at the fair. It's part of the best part of working at the university on this opportunity. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about how we've used the D2D, or the State Fair Research Facility, to develop an intervention through a rapid cycle process. Next slide. Several years ago, back in 2019, I was looking for a way to use this opportunity to try out a new activity called timelining with children. And we thought if we could have kids draw a timeline about their life, we might be able to measure change in well-being over time. But what it actually did was it helped us realize that through the process of children talking about their timelines, we could really get a good sense of their coping, and they enjoyed the conversations, and parents actually asked us, how can we get our children to talk to us like they're talking to you? So I'm going to share how we have used a series of studies at the State Fair to develop an intervention. Next slide. This is an image that shows our rapid cycle process. So each of these blocks or bars shows about a 1-year period of time, where in September or October we start planning, and then there's 2 weeks of data collection at the State Fair. We very quickly analyze our data, and then we aim to disseminate before we start planning, or while we're planning for the next study. So as soon as we're collecting and analyzing data, we're thinking, how can we use this to evolve our development of the intervention towards our next study? So we're always thinking about the next fair. Next slide. This shows a series of 6 or 7 studies since 2019, where our analysis from each year has driven insights to the next study. We recently submitted a grant proposal based on this to test an intervention that we've developed over time. If you go to the next slide, I'll zoom in on a few of these years. So in 2023, we've been hearing, as we're doing these timelining activities with children at the fair, the parents would come up and tap us on the shoulder and say, how can we get our children to talk to us like they're talking to you? The kids would come into the fair building, they'd line up to take our study, and they would put down their corn dogs and cotton candy to sit down with us, which at first was a real surprise to me. But the more we talked with kids, the more we realized they're eager for an opportunity to talk about coping their life with an adult. In 2023, we asked every kid who did this, would you want to do this with someone who knows you? Who would you do it with? And what would they learn about you? And based on that data, we learned that most kids would love to do this with a parent, an uncle, a grandparent, a sibling, somebody who does know them, a teacher. And they shared a lot of insights about what those people would learn if they would spend a little bit of time talking with them. So we've been refining our protocol to ask the right questions during this timelining activity. We also in 2023 asked about 24 kids. We looked for people who would be willing to do this over time. So we had 24 children in 2023 agree to check in with us every 6 months. So after the fair, we scheduled a Zoom meeting and did the activity with them every 6 months for 2 years. So we got some longitudinal data. And then in 2024, we did a study where we actually had parents interview their kids doing the timeline activity. We had friends interviewing friends, and we set it up like a podcast. If you hit next, Annie. We set up our booth similar to a podcast, only it wasn't streamed publicly, it was privately recorded, but we were able to record the conversations that parents and kids had. And we used that to design an intervention that we're going to be testing in a randomized controlled trial if we can get some funding. Next slide. And next slide. Okay. We have, as Ellen mentioned, been able to recruit over 1,000 youth to help inform the development of this intervention. We've been to 5 different counties through the county fair opportunity and the state fair. We've done 32 shifts over 6 years, and each year we do 3 to 5 fairs. It's always exciting when the university president stops by, and we have a lot of students involved. Next slide. One of the best parts of this opportunity is the ability to engage students. So in our studies, we've engaged 4 PhD students. Usually this is a student research assistant, 21 Doctor of Nursing practice students, so students in a practice degree, and then 13 baccalaureate students who are becoming nurses, and 1 postdoctoral fellow. It's a great way for them to learn about research. It's a great way for them to practice their assessment and interview skills with youth, and they interact with each other to learn about the different programs and opportunities for research. Next slide. Even though the county fairs haven't been every year, I would say this is the absolute best part of my research facility experience. We were able to travel to 4 county fairs across the state. We've been able to meet people where they live and help them understand that nurses do research and that we're interested in their input. We've met Miss Morris Teen. We've met the clowns in Laverne. We've played with Goldie at some racetracks. We've seen all this, some parts of the state where people have come up to us and said they're grateful that we want to ask them about their experiences. Next slide. So our next step is based on what we've been learning in the State Fair research studies. We've developed an intervention on how to help parents have conversations with teens that will help them talk about their coping and resilience. Hopefully we'll get some funding for this. And this year at the State Fair, we're trying out some of these materials that we've developed to ask teens and parents, what do you think? How can we make them better? Next slide. Just briefly, I want to share that we do make it a goal to disseminate very quickly our findings from the State Fair. So working with our students and faculty colleagues, we aim to get everything published within the next 6 months to a year after the data collection. We've also presented our work locally, nationally, and internationally, and it's great visibility for the university, and people have been really interested in this as a way to collect data and engage the public. So thank you for the opportunity to share, and I hope to see you at the fair.
Thank you so much, Wendy. That was amazing. The next person we're going to hear from is Dr. Melanie Firestone. So Dr. Firestone is an assistant professor at the University of Minnesota School of Public Health in the Division of Environmental Health Sciences. She conducts research and teaches classes on foodborne diseases and outbreak investigations. She works collaboratively with the Minnesota Department of Health through the Minnesota Integrated Food Safety Center of Excellence, which is a partnership between the U and the State Health Department. She has a PhD in Environmental Health Sciences from our University of Minnesota and a Master of Public Health degree in Epidemiology from Columbia. Prior to joining the University of Minnesota, she was the CDC Epidemic Intelligence Service Officer assigned to the Minnesota Department of Health. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you so much for having me. Next slide. So today I want to talk a little bit about how the State Fair Research Building has served as a pipeline for student researchers. And then I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the policy implications from some of the studies that I've led at the State Fair Research Building. Next slide. So my experience with the State Fair Research Building actually started when I was a PhD student. And one of my fellow classmates was leading a study at the State Fair, and she was looking for volunteers to help with the data collection process. So I volunteered as a data collector for her study going viral in 2018. And this really provided an opportunity for me to get a better understanding of how research at the fair works from start to finish, because she involved us in the process of going through informed consent, what it was like during the fair, and then even helped explain to us kind of the process after the fair, what happens with the next steps there. Next slide. So this actually inspired me and one of my other PhD classmates to do our own studies in 2019. So you can see here, I have Diner Dash on the left, which is the study that I led as a student PI. And then Dr. Kim Bonner led Flu Shot or Not. So Kim was also a volunteer in 2018 for Katie's study. And because we had this experience of going through the process as these volunteer data collectors, that really helped us better prepare to be able to lead studies ourselves. And we could also lean on Katie's experience as a student PI to kind of learn the process ourselves. Next slide. So Madura actually volunteered for my study in 2019 as a volunteer data collector. And this kind of continued that pipeline for student researchers at the fair. So she was a PhD student at the time. And by volunteering as a data collector for my study in 2019, this gave her experience to be able to lead her own study in 2021, as you can see here. So next slide. This cycle has really continued. So I came back to the university in 2022 as faculty after completing my PhD. And one of the first things that I was really excited to do when I came back to the university was to actually be able to do studies at the fair again. So in 2023, we had a student PI, Lexi Willis, who just defended her dissertation yesterday. So she's newly minted Dr. Willis. She was really interested in working with us on a food safety study to focus on understanding frozen food consumption and preparation practices and how this might be influencing personal risk through consumer behaviors. So in this year, I actually got to serve as the PI for a student PI for this process. Next slide. So this cycle continued again. So we had Andrea, who volunteered as a data collector for the study that Lexi led as the student PI, and that inspired her and gave her the skills to be able to lead her own studies. And she actually led 2 in 2024. So we have pictured here one picture from one of the studies there. And then also this year, there was a researcher who was doing her PhD at Concordia University. And based on what her goals for her research were, we felt like the State Fair was really a good opportunity for her to collect a large amount of data in a short amount of time to be able to answer some questions she had for her dissertation. So I actually served as the PI for this student from Concordia University for that year too. So that was a very busy year at the State Fair for our team here. Next. And then in 2015, Lexi, building off of her experience from leading a study in 2023, served as a student PI. I served as the faculty PI for this study, where we asked people about how they weigh different factors when they're purchasing different produce items. Next slide. So as you can see from all of these examples, often we see that students might serve as a volunteer data collector and use that experience to help inspire their own studies at the State Fair. And with my personal experience, I actually went from being a volunteer data collector to a student PI and then supervising student PIs for their own research at the fair, which has been an incredibly rewarding experience. It's so fun to be able to see students take advantage of this opportunity to do research at the fair and to be able to do it from start to finish. So some of the benefits I've listed here are that it really gives them experience in primary data collection, but it's also this opportunity to learn how to do the responsible conduct of research. So as Dr. Demarest mentioned, having that support from the IRB with this particular process is really a great experience for students to maybe get some of their firsthand experience with the IRB. And it really provides this opportunity to carry out a project from start to finish, especially for PhD students who sometimes might not have a long period of time that they're able to do this. This provides a forum where they're able to to do their research and really collect a lot of quality data in a short amount of time. It's also led to numerous presentations and peer-reviewed publications. So I have two examples here of these were student-led projects that actually led to these two students having their first author manuscripts, which is very exciting for them here. Next slide. So switching gears, I just want to talk a little bit about some policy implications from some of these studies. So in 2019, as a student PI, I led Diner Dash, and we asked people about whether or not they wanted better access to restaurant inspection results in Minnesota. And at the time, there were no places in Minnesota that had inspection results publicly available. And we saw that people were really interested in this information and reported that they would actually use it to decide where to eat. And this was valuable information because the city of Minneapolis at the time was going through the process of making restaurant inspection results available online. And they were able to help build the justification with the findings from our study. Next slide. In 2023, in our What's in Your Freezer study, we asked people what frozen foods they were eating and how they prepare them. And we actually had a very rich data source from this. We've had two publications from this already, and we have another one in progress. So just to highlight one quick thing from this study, we asked about stuffed breaded chicken products because there's been a lot of outbreaks related to stuffed breaded chicken products, partly because there's confusion because there are both raw products on the market and pre-cooked products. And we've seen from outbreaks that people are not always preparing them by cooking them to an adequate cooking temperature to kill any potential pathogens that might be in them. So in our study, we found that people reported that they were following cooking instructions on the packaging, but what they actually reported doing was oftentimes using appliances that didn't have validated cooking instructions to make sure that the product was cooked adequately. And so this supported the policy that the USDA was putting in place in 2024 to actually have salmonella be considered an adulterant in raw, frozen, breaded, stuffed chicken products. Next slide. From our 2025 study, we were looking at factors that people weighed when purchasing fresh leafy greens or bagged leafy greens. And we wanted to consider things like food safety, but also other factors that people might consider like local versus not local and how people weighed these. And one of our interests was in whether or not people were interested in this process of food irradiation. And what we found was that respondents would require a discount of 60 cents to purchase irradiated lettuce, which has benefits for eliminating foodborne pathogens and increasing shelf life. And I should note that this study was done in 2025, and given that we've seen so many outbreaks happening this summer, if we were to repeat this study this year, we would probably see very different findings because there's been so much attention to bagged lettuce this summer. Next slide. So finally, also for this Let Us Know study, we asked people whether or not they eat food after the best before or use by dates or different sell by dates on food products. So best before and use by dates are indicators of quality or best flavor, but not actually for safety. And sell by dates are meant for store inventory management. So they're not related at all to the quality or best flavor. And what we found is that more than 1 in 10 respondents reported never eating food after this sell-by date, which is really not intended for being related to quality or safety. And interestingly, just July 1st, California banned sell-by dates as a strategy to reduce food waste. And given our findings actually support that this might be an effective strategy for reducing food waste. And I'll leave it there and turn it back to Dr. Demarest.
Thank you so much, Melanie. That was fascinating. I'm learning a lot about what our researchers are doing today myself and how they're thinking about the facility and how it works with their teams and their research. So next, we're going to move on to Dr. Boyan Huang. He is a professor and assistant dean for faculty development at the University of Minnesota School of Dentistry. His research focuses on advancing telehealth technologies and practice models, building on earlier investigations of biological and sociobehavioral risk factors for oral disease. His prior work has examined dental and craniofacial anomalies, traumatic dental injuries, and non-nutritive sucking behaviors. He is currently developing an AI-enabled teledentistry practice model to strengthen clinical decision-making and provide online patient support, reflecting his commitment to innovating how dental care is delivered. Welcome, Dr. Huang.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. When dentists look at a tooth, we never rely on just one angle. We tilt the mirror, adjust the light, and look from the front, the side, and the chewing surface, because each view reveals something different. In today's teledentistry systems, dentists are often limited to assessing patients from a two-dimensional perspective. That means the accuracy of the diagnosis can depend heavily on the clinician's training, experience, and ability to mentally reconstruct what they cannot see. This is what we learned from our 2022 State Fair research. And you can see that's our team in 2022. And for most of today's AI tools, whether they use radiographs or clinical photos, are also working from two-dimensional images. So they inherit the same limitation. It's like the old story of the blind man and the elephant. One person touches the nose and think it's a snake. Another touches the side and think it's a wall. Another touches the tail and think it's a rope. Each one is convinced they are right, but each is only experiencing part of the truth. One view can mislead. But when you walk around the elephant, when you see it from multiple perspectives, the full picture becomes clear. Our AI assistant is built on that same principle. So if multiple perspectives help us understand a tooth more clearly, the next question is, how do we teach an AI to see the way dentists do? To answer that, we went somewhere unexpected, the Minnesota State Fair again. Next slide, please. This is our team at Minnesota State Fair in 2024. One of the most joyful parts of this project, we invited fair-goers to help us build a new kind of dental data set by taking simple smartphone photos of their teeth. Back on our campus, our students and clinicians manually annotated hundreds of these images, tooth by tooth, to teach the AI what dentists look for. This is important because it means the AI is built on human expertise. It learns from the same visual cues dentists use every day. And it reflects the values of our university: community engagement, student involvement, and innovation grounded in real people. All of that human expertise, the photos, the annotations, the careful labeling, becomes the foundation for the AI assistant. And here's what that looks like when it all comes together. Next slide, please. So what does this look like in practice? A patient takes 3 simple photos with a smartphone, the same 3 views you just saw earlier. Those images go to the cloud where our AI assistant analyzes them from a 3-dimensional perspective. It highlights areas that might need attention: early decay, crack, wear patterns, things that can hide in one view but appear clearly in another. And then the dentist makes the final decision. The AI doesn't diagnose. It simply acts as a second set of eyes, helping dentists diagnose with confidence, especially when they are working remotely or under time pressure. As I explained, this technology doesn't just help dentists diagnose with confidence, it also helps patients receive more reliable guidance, clear images, better supported assessment, and more appropriate next steps in their care. Patients will know who is reviewing their photos, how the images are being interpreted, and why a particular recommendation is being made. That transparency builds trust. And it also helps non-dental professionals. such as school nurses, long-term care staff, community health workers, ER clinicians, and even parents, people who are often the first to see the dental problem, but may not know what they are looking at. With this tool, they can get clearer direction faster and connect patient to the right level of care. So it becomes a win-win-win. Dentists get a second set of eyes. Patients get more reliable guidance and more appropriate treatment pathways. Communities get better access to timely, trustworthy dental support. And we are going back to the Minnesota State Fair for further research this year as well. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Huang. That was fascinating. I believe the next order of business is to open to questions, perhaps. But before I go to that, I just want to make sure that I introduce and thank Annie Hotop. So Annie Hotop is the program manager and coordinator for everything that happens at the State Fair facility and is going out to the county fairs with our investigators as well. She does a heroic job working on this year-round. It's 21 days at the fair, but her work is happening throughout the year. And I know all of our researchers really benefit from her wisdom, her kindness, and all of her expertise in running this like a top so that their research can go forward efficiently. So I want to make sure to thank Annie and make sure that she's brought up as the heart and soul of this endeavor. All right. Well, so I was wondering if someone needed to take over from here to help shepherd the rest of the program.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen. And thank you to each of you for your time presenting today. Gosh, I feel like I just had the front seat row to all of your probably amazing lectures. We could spend an hour with each of you about all of these topics. So thank you for casting a light on some of the work that you're doing and how it relates to the State Fair. All right, let's jump into some Q&A. I know we had a really quick question that came up in the chat that Dr. Firestone was able to answer already, but about the PI. Dr. Firestone, do you mind going back into explaining that once more for the audience?
Sure, yeah, and thank you for asking that. When I say a PI, what I'm talking about is the principal investigator. So that's the person that's leading the study. They're kind of the lead scientist on the study and carrying it out from start to finish. And we do have the opportunity for students to serve as student PIs under the supervision of an established PI. So I talked about several student PIs in this role. So they really were the ones carrying it out under the supervision of established PIs.
Awesome. Thank you for going through that. That makes perfect sense. And since you're already thinking about all this, I'm going to take the next question to you as well. The student to researcher pipeline that you described is really cool and awesome to hear about. How would you encourage future students to get involved if maybe they don't have a mentor or a person that they already know who's doing this work?
Yeah, a lot of the studies are looking for volunteers every year to get involved. Studies usually have like 3 to 4 volunteers to help with the data collection. And I believe Annie actually maintains a list of students that have reached out that are interested in getting involved. So that's one opportunity, is to reach out to the State Fair email address, or State Fair Research Building email address, to get directly involved. Also, there's an opportunity if you've seen participants faculty that have participated in years past. As you can see, we all like to come back year after year. So you can certainly ask if people are doing a study the following year and if they're looking for volunteers, and reach out to them directly.
That's awesome to hear. And it's super cool just to kind of hear about how it's a generational thing for researchers too. I think that's one of those amazing assets that you get when you're a graduate student, to be advised to participate in this type of thing. So I hope that the message continues to travel down through future court classes as well. All right, let's kind of pivot and go in a slightly different direction here. To Dr. Demarath, could you talk about what has been the most surprising finding that you've been made aware of that's happened at the fair?
Oh gosh, I don't think I could even begin because, we have over 200 publications, and to my eyes, they're all astounding. I think that, you know, I couldn't name one. I mean, the research is so vast. We have people in clinical care, like Dr. Huang. We have people in food safety, like Dr. Firestone. We have people in nursing and child mental health. And we have such a gamut. We have people that are studying, bring in huge cameras, like a whole array of cameras that watch individuals walk and then take that data in order to inform prostheses or ambulatory medicine care. And it's just what I find surprising may not be an individual finding, but more that there's a very wide variety of investigators, researchers who I think enjoy having the interpersonal contact. Research has that reputation of sort of being in a you're in your lab coat, or, you've got test tubes and you're sort of sequestered off doing your whatever you're doing in the laboratory, or writing your manuscripts. But actually, what I think brings a lot of joy to the research endeavor is getting out into the public and having conversations. And that's where it surprised me from the very beginning that Minnesotans are so curious that they will take their day off at the fair and give a sample of saliva for DNA extraction, and that they will then ask their child to do it too. They're like, come on now, you can do this. It's for the university. So I think what I'm surprised at is that we can't forget that even though higher ed is facing a lot of headwinds, and sometimes we're feeling that there is a lack of public trust around higher education and around research, right? And science, that still there are lots of people in this state from all over the state, not just in the Twin Cities, who are eager and interested in talking with scientists and hearing what we're doing, being involved, and also telling us what they think, what they want. So, I think we sometimes get too down on the fact that there are headwinds, but our university is well known and well respected. And so we need to remember that and not be afraid to go out there and have those conversations.
I wholeheartedly agree. The work that's happening, even just the sample here, knowing it's such a small sample, but is so incredible. The way that we're able to see participants really multiply the efforts here is just awesome. It's amazing synergy to kind of just learn about how everyone kind of benefits from this short-term experience that takes place. All right. A question to you, Dr. Wing. It was great to learn about how your work is informing dental AI models, which I did not know was a thing before this call. But can you talk about how you've run into any hesitation maybe from participants, or maybe folks who have chosen not to participate, who maybe didn't want to share their images, or just if you've run into anything like that?
Thank you. Yes, apparently, based on our previous 2 years experience, definitely we'll have some participants, either they have actually quite significant dental problem they don't want to share with us, or we do have some teenager, they are willing to share with us, but they didn't go with their parents or guardians, so they couldn't sign the consent form for that. But then, of course, also when we present or publish those data findings, we were also sometimes challenged by the peer review. They say, okay, those who could go to the state fair means they probably in a reasonably healthy condition. They may be in a good mood. So for those who are in like ill condition or social demographic situation may not allow them to afford a ticket to enter the state fair, those people may be excluded from our sample. So if we look at the fair goer who actually have been on site, and then how did we try to attract them, to encourage them? Like both year, we provide a spin toothbrush, which means electric toothbrush, as a motivation for our fair-goer who are willing to participate and they get that one. But we also enter some very basic oral health, oral hygiene question, like tell them how they can use their toothbrush and how that, if they have any question, and how they can come to the School of Dentistry in Moose Tower to seek for professional patient care. That's something we do. But on the other hand, for the research part, because apparently we also need to include some more severe cases. So we also collaborate with CUHCC, that's the Community University Clinical Centers, that can get some real patient, which means their situation or cases are more severe, and that can help to train the AI, but also our teledentistry model to see from different perspectives. So we try to balance those.
Thank you for talking through that. That makes perfect sense. And it's really a nice opportunity to just do some community education too, and remind people of the ways they can reach back out for more access to resources too. That's wonderful to hear about that. All right, I have a question for you, Dr. Lumen. Can you talk about this Kids Timeline project a little bit more, and talk about how accurate are they at recounting their own timelines, and does their age matter at when they're having that conversation? Is there a certain age where it's most impactful?
That's a really good question, and that's one of the things that we looked at our data to try to figure out. We've included children as young as 8 and up to 17. 8 to 9 is a little young. All children have been interested. What we have found is that for the middle adolescents from age 14 to 17, it seems to be most useful to draw out conversations that they might not spontaneously have otherwise. And when we did our recordings between parents and children, we found that there were some parents who are really good at engaging teens in conversations about their timeline and how their year was. And there were some that needed a little more help with the words to use and the way to engage them. So what we did in developing the intervention is the timeline activity opens the door. It opens the door to a conversation, but what parents need some help with is how to keep that door open and how to engage the teen in a conversation that's helpful, meaningful, and doesn't shut that door again. So that's what our study, our next study is going to be. Is we've developed some tools to give parents the understanding about brain development, words to use, and ways to engage the teen, and we're hoping that that will be helpful. Yeah,
That's
and the accuracy is really not important. It's really the activity to open the door about how was your year. Usually there's a dip in the line, and we ask the children to talk about how did you come out of that dip and what was helpful. Thanks for that question.
Yeah, I love learning about that as someone that's worked with student development for a while, and we know brains are not fully formed until mid-20s. And so it's very cool to think about how those interactions make a difference for people along the way too. All right, I know we are running short on time, so I'm going to do a combo question to kind of close us out here. If you all could maybe talk, or maybe Dr. Demerath, if you could take the lead, can you talk a little bit more about the IRB process? Has there been any moments where they've pushed back on how the data is collected? And then also related, how important is that informed consent piece of the puzzle here?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, early on, we were questioned by a person from the community who was really dubious about whether proper informed consent can be obtained in an admittedly loud and sometimes chaotic environment. So that really made us, I mean, we were always concerned with informed consent, as every researcher must be who deals with human subjects. Um, but it made us really double down and think about all the ways that we can make it secure and appropriate for the setting. So one thing we do is make sure that all of the studies are minimal risk. And that's something that just means that there's certainly guidelines around what that means. Okay, so a blood draw is still considered minimal risk. However, asking maybe some sensitive questions about personal past experience may not be. So for instance, we did get pushback from IRB, the IRB board around a number of protocols that had to do with experience with suicidal events in their family or their own history. And that was considered something that, while of course important for research, might be something that might be just too difficult given the lack of privacy in the setting. So that's an example. Other things, clearly we are needing to do things that are minimal risk, but also the privacy element. So it may not be risky, but it's not appropriate for the fair setting. Another thing that's just not as appropriate for the fair setting is the duration. So we make sure that our investigators are doing things that can be done usually at no more than 25 minutes, and that would be the most, because we don't think that level of sort of time investment is appropriate for the fair setting. So yes, so we have that dedicated institutional review committee and representative that goes through with a fine-tooth comb all of our protocols. But we haven't had very many that have run up against questions. And usually the concerns over risk can be managed with some small tweaks to the protocol that the investigator has put together.
That's really good and helpful to understand all of that and the thoughtfulness that has gone on behind the scenes prior to the fair even starting about how all of that fits together, since it is so important and key. All right, I'm almost going to move us into our thank yous and wrap up here, but I did want to give you the chance to share how can people participate this year, and are they getting some cool swag? If they do, what does that look like?
Annie, could you chime in here? You are the queen of swag at the fair, and also you know how people could find out what studies are running at the State Fair this year.
Sure, sure. So every year we have a new giveaway item. So we've got a crossbody bag this year, a different design from last year. You'll have to come check us out on Cosgrove Street. Like Ellen said earlier, we are across the street from the Education and Creative Arts Building. We're just down the street from 4-H, so we're on the Snelling side of the fair. Please come see us. You can find out the schedule information on our website, which is posted here up on the screen for you. And let's see, what was the other question, Sam? I'm forgetting. It was a giveaway and
Just how can they participate?
So come by 1367 Cosgrove. We will be part of the State Fair app. If you download the app to find that on your phone, you can find us there on the app. And then the building is open from 9 a.m. until 9 p.m. We have 10 different studies running at any given time of the day, and hopefully there'll be something for everybody, something that folks will be eligible for and interested in to participate. So we just can't wait to see you. 21 days to go.
Woohoo, the countdown is on. We are exactly 3 weeks away from the State Fair. I know many of us on the call here, but also in the audience are so excited to be able to engage with the rest of the state on that day, on those days. All right, well, I'm going to wrap us up. Thank you all so much. This concludes our time today. A huge thank you and appreciation to each of our presenters. It was truly phenomenal to learn from all of you during your presentations and learn about the process of conducting your research. A special shout out to Annie Hotop for helping to make the connection here and make this session possible. I know I'm even more excited to get over to the research building this year during the fair in just a couple short weeks. And to the audience, be sure to check out our Future in Focus webpage for the full fall lineup of upcoming webinars. I will mention there's a really cool one coming up on September 1st. We'll be featuring Dr. Michael Osterholm in a conversation about public health. So